Somewhere in the cold silence between stars, where warships drift like predators and peace is just a fragile illusion, something happened. Not an invasion. Not a battle. Not the thunder of weapons or the blaze of fleets. But a woman. Alone. Unarmed. Calm. Walked into the heart of a galactic empire built on fear. She didn't bring demands. She didn't bring threats. She brought only words, a name wrapped in myth, and a wooden pendant worn smooth by centuries. The Morgarians thought they understood power. Their king saw her as nothing more than an old diplomat from a fragile species. But some names aren't meant to be spoken aloud. And some stories don't end where they begin. Because what stepped onto that ship was not just a diplomat. It was a memory walking in human skin. It was myth made flesh. And it had come not to fight, but to remind. Remind them what waits when pride blinds kings. Remind them why some stories survive not by being told, but by being feared. This isn't science fiction. It's a reckoning. A shadow passed down through generations, now rising again beneath the stars. So ask yourself, before this begins, do you really think Earth is as harmless as it looks? Or have we simply learned to hide what we truly are? Stay with us. Because once you hear her name, you won't forget it. Not in this life. Not in any. The Morgarian flagship hung in the void like a slumbering god of war. Its hull stretched across the black of space, cold, jagged steel lined with glowing crimson veins that pulsed like a beating heart. The light wasn't mechanical, it was alive, almost organic. Every flicker hummed with silent threat. The ship's shadow alone could swallow a dozen moons. Inside the command deck, the air was thick with the scent of ozone and oil. Alien consoles blinked in patterns no human mind could decipher. Symbols shifted like whispers on stone, glowing dimly beneath clawed fingers that never knew mercy. At the heart of the deck, standing beneath a looming star map of the galaxy, was Grand Admiral Zorkar. Over 9 feet tall, his scaled skin shimmered like black glass under the flickering red lights. 4 eyes blinked asynchronously, 2 focused on the map, 2 locked on the screen displaying the approaching Earth vessel. His armor hissed softly with each movement, pressurized and predatory. He sneered. Lips curled back to reveal rows of needle-thin teeth. Zorkar, mocking. Look at that, a pebble drifting toward a volcano. This is who Earth sends. The bridge was silent, except for the hum of the reactors far below. Then, from behind him, a softer voice responded, measured, cautious, respectful. Commander Lyraxa, adorned in ceremonial red plating, stepped forward. Her 4 eyes avoided direct contact with her superiors. Lyraxa. Her name is Helena Mirov. Human diplomat. Known for brokering 17 interstellar accords. 3 major conflicts avoided because of her. Zorkar chuckled. A low, gravelly rumble that vibrated through the deck plating like distant thunder. Zorkar. 17. How precious. I've ended 17 civilizations in 1 solar cycle. He turned slowly toward the viewport, arms crossed behind his back. Outside, against the vast expanse of stars, a single human shuttle approached. Small. Fragile. Alone. Zorkar leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing to slits. Zorkar. Let's welcome our guest, and then, crush her hope. A pause. And then a smile, not one of amusement, but of slow, calculated hunger. The kind of smile a predator wears when it's already decided the outcome. Inside the narrow hull of the human shuttle, silence reigned. The cabin lights pulsed a soft blue, casting long shadows across the steel walls. Everything was polished, precise, sterile in its simplicity. But standing in the center, untouched by the coldness around her, was a woman who seemed carved from something far older than the ship itself. Helena Mirov. 60 years old by human calendars. Her hair, silver like moonlight, was tied back with purpose. Her face bore the lines of experience, not weakness, each wrinkle a tale, each crease a quiet warning. Her eyes were the most striking of all, sharp, calculating, and calm. The kind of calm you only see in people who've stared into war and didn't blink. Around her neck hung a wooden pendant. Small, simple, but ancient. Its surface was carved with symbols no alien on that ship would understand. It didn't shine. It didn't hum. It didn't glow. And yet it drew the eye. It held weight. Like history pressing against the present. A low hiss echoed through the shuttle docking sequence complete. The floor trembled slightly beneath her boots as magnetic locks engaged. A red light above the door turned green. With a soft clunk, the shuttle doors began to open. Beyond them stood 6 Morgarian guards, each one armored in bone plate and dark alloy, their weapons crackling with plasma, their postures dripping with disdain. Helena didn't flinch. She simply exhaled, as if stepping into another room, not another world. She didn't come with an army. She didn't bring a fleet. Only a voice, and something much older than steel. As she crossed the threshold between a human vessel and the Morgarian flagship, the guards stepped forward. None spoke, but their body language screamed the same message. You are not welcome here. And yet, Helena smiled just slightly. As if she'd seen this before. As if she expected much worse to come. The corridor narrowed. Fluorescent red lines ran along the ceiling like veins, casting a dull glow over the black metallic walls. The air inside the Morgarian security checkpoint was colder than the rest of the ship by design, perhaps. A silent message, you are not in control here. Helena stepped forward. Waiting ahead was a scanning chamber, half ritual, half humiliation. Alien machines clicked and pulsed around the perimeter. Mechanical arms dangled from the ceiling, humming with sensors, lenses, and injectors. One of the Morgarian guards moved toward her, taller than the others, scarred across his jaw, his voice a low growl shaped by centuries of conquest. Guard, gruffly. Remove the necklace. No artifacts allowed. Helena's eyes flicked up to meet his. She didn't raise her voice. Didn't argue. But her reply carried the weight of memory. Helena, calmly. It's symbolic. Ancient. From my homeland. The guard's reptilian eyes narrowed, unimpressed. His claws twitched around the handle of his weapon. Guard, sharper. Remove it, or we take it by force. Helena's shoulders rose slightly with a quiet breath. Not of fear, but of tired familiarity. She reached up, unclasping the wooden pendant with deliberate care. She held it for a moment in her palm, running her thumb along its surface like one might stroke the bark of an old tree. Then she placed it gently into the tray. It made no sound. But something unseen shifted. The guard sneered. Without ceremony, he picked up the pendant and, with no respect, no understanding, tossed it into a containment bin. A hollow clink. The kind of sound that echoes long after it's gone. Helena didn't move, didn't speak, but her gaze lingered on the bin. Just for a second. Not with sadness, not with anger, but with something colder. Some things, when disrespected, remember. And they do not forget. The doors creaked open, tall, jagged slabs of bone fused with blackened metal. Beyond them stretched a throne room not built, but forged from conquest. The walls were adorned with trophies, blades from fallen armies, fragments of broken worlds, the preserved skulls of species that dared to defy the Morgarian Empire. The ceiling arched high above, disappearing into a shadowed dome laced with slow pulsing lights. Every flicker resembled a heartbeat, a warning. At the far end, raised atop a jagged platform, sat King Vormal. He was more machine than flesh, now fused with ancient armor that groaned under its own power. Cables fed into his spine. His 6 arms rested like weapons in weight, 2 of them twitching with unnatural precision. His face, partially masked, revealed glowing red eyes and a mouth made for commands, not conversation. Helena entered with measured steps. Alone. Small. But she didn't seem diminished. Not even when facing the king of 1,000 conquered systems. Vormal, booming. So, the humans send a grandmother to speak of peace. Whispers stirred in the court. Morgarian nobles leaned in. A few chuckled behind their mandibles. But Helena didn't flinch. Her reply was even. Calm. As if addressing an equal. Helena. Earth does not kneel. We speak as equals or not at all. The chamber stiffened. Silence fell, heavy and electric. One of Vormal's mechanical fingers twitched. A nearby guard's grip tightened on his staff. But Helena simply continued. Helena, firm. Before we begin, I would like my pendant returned. It's tradition in Earth diplomacy. A pause. Then laughter. Not warm. Not amused. But sharp. Cold. Arrogant. Vormal, mocking. This toy? A piece of wood. With casual cruelty, he lifted a hand, metal fingers tightening, and crushed the pendant in his claw. A dry crack. Tiny splinters fell like dead leaves to the obsidian floor. Helena watched. No expression. No outburst. Only a stillness, unnatural in its depth. She looked up. Eyes unreadable. Voice low. Timeless. Helena, quietly. You just made a very old mistake. A ripple moved through the court, though no one could explain why. Something shifted. Something ancient stirred. There are objects born of myth, and those born of memory. Some are both, and when broken they do not die. They awaken. The silence didn't last. From his throne of steel and bone, King Vormal lifted one of his massive arms, mechanical joints hissing, claws twitching with command. The gesture was simple, absolute, and without hesitation, the guards moved. 6 of them, towering, armored, armed with shock lances that had ended revolutions, stepped forward, forming a half circle around Helena. She didn't flinch, didn't step back, didn't even raise her hands. Her voice, when it came, was low. Calm. But beneath it, there was something older. Something cold. Helena, softly. I came in peace. I still can leave, in peace. But harm me, and you'll face something ancient. The guards didn't slow. Vormal, commanding. Seize her. That was the moment everything changed. Time seemed to ripple. There was no flash, no beam, no warning. Just blurred motion, a blur that tore across the space between them. One guard was lifted and thrown effortlessly, his body crashing into the far wall with a sickening metallic thud. Another collapsed mid-step, screaming. his weapon spinning from his grasp as he clutched at an unseen wound. A third didn't even have time to react, his eyes wide in confusion as his legs gave out from beneath him. The court erupted in chaos. But Helena stood still at the center, her breath steady, her hands empty, and her eyes glowing. Not brightly, not with light, but with memory, with fury, with something no science could measure. When she spoke again, her voice wasn't hers anymore. It was deeper, older, like roots speaking through stone. Helena, darkly, you don't understand what I am. A silence swept the chamber, not the silence of stillness, but the silence of realization. Something had entered that throne room. Something that looked human, but no longer pretended to be. The mistake was not in crushing the pendant. The mistake was thinking she could be broken just as easily. The alarms wailed. Doors burst open on every level of the throne chamber. Dozens of Morgarian guards stormed in armor clanking, boots pounding, weapons raised. They formed a ring around Helena, plasma blasters glowing bright and ready. The air thickened with ozone and heat, with a scent of panic trying to masquerade as control. Then came the order. Blasters fired. The air filled with lances of blue energy, deadly, precise, designed to melt through steel. Helena walked through them, unscathed, unmoving. The beams curved around her, some veering off course, others simply fizzling out before reaching her skin. The field around her shimmered faintly, like the ripples on water untouched by wind. But then something stranger happened. On the floor, where the remains of her crushed pendant lay in splinters, the air began to twist. The shards lifted. One by one, as if summoned by invisible strings, they rose into the air, spinning slowly at first, then faster. Faster. Each piece became a blur, tiny, jagged, ancient. They didn't glow. They didn't hum. But they pulsed with purpose. And then they flew. Like guided missiles, the shards launched themselves outward, striking the guards with uncanny precision, slipping between armor plates, embedding into key joints, disabling without killing. The Morgarians fell in waves, confused, panicked, overwhelmed by something they could neither see nor understand. At the far end of the room, King Vormal roared. He stepped down from his throne and moved toward the war bay. Metal doors peeled open like the mouth of a beast. From within, his battle exosuite emerged. 10 feet tall. A fortress of machinery, spiked and seething with energy. Plates of black armor shifted into place over his body as the king climbed in, his limbs locking with cybernetic precision. A crown of wires fused with his skull. Cannons rotated on his shoulders. Jetpacks hissed on his back. Red sensors blinked to life across his chest. He was no longer a king. He was a war machine. Vormal, voice amplified, thunderous. Face me, witch. Helena turned to him slowly. Her expression didn't change. She didn't run. She didn't flinch. She simply raised her hand. Helena, I warned you. The spinning shards that still hovered in the air froze, then struck. They moved as 120, maybe more, each one targeting a vital seam, a vulnerable joint, a hidden flaw in the armor. The impact was instant. Sparks exploded. Systems overloaded. Joints locked. Circuits screamed. The massive exosuite stumbled first to one knee, then the other, before crashing to the floor like a fallen titan. The ground shook. Vormal's voice glitched. His weapons powered down. Smoke hissed from the cracks in his armor. He was trapped. Defeated. He built a suit of power, but forgot there are forces no metal can stop, and no crown can command. The throne room fell into silence. The towering exosuite of King Vormal, once a symbol of unstoppable dominion, now lay on its side, broken and lifeless. Sparks hissed from its core. The air still shimmered from the clash of magic and metal. The floor was scorched. The walls cracked. The very chamber seemed to hold its breath. And from the wreckage, the king stirred. Not proudly, not regally, but like a man emerging from the wreckage of his own delusion. His voice was no longer booming. It was small, hoarse, stripped of arrogance. Vormal, whispering. "What are you?" There were no more threats in his tone. No commands. Only the first flicker of something he hadn't felt in centuries. Fear. Helena stood beside him, still, unmoving. The air around her calm, unnaturally so, as if even the heat dared not touch her. She looked down at him not with cruelty, but with the eyes of a being who had seen many kings rise and fall. "Helena," quietly, "I am a diplomat. But long before that, I was something else." She crouched slowly beside the damaged armor, her face half lit by the dim glow of failing power cells. Her voice lowered like a whisper told between worlds. "Helena, in my land, they called me Baba Yaga." The name hung in the air like smoke. Alien translators stalled, uncertain whether to render it as a title or a warning. Around them, the chamber remained frozen. The guards, armed, disciplined, conditioned to obey, lowered their weapons. Not because they were ordered to, but because something deep in their bones told them to. The court nobles, creatures of pride and politics, took an unconscious step back. One by one, the ancient name echoed again, not in sound, but in meaning. Baba Yaga. Not a woman, not a myth, but a threshold. A being that stood between peace and ruin. That judged, not by law, but by balance. In every culture, there are names meant to be whispered. Not because they are forgotten, but because the wise remember them too well. And on that day, beneath the bones of 1,000 conquered worlds, the Morgarian Empire learned a name they would never forget. The war chamber was still. Not silent but hushed. Like a cathedral after thunder. Screens flickered with holographic maps of territory. Star charts rotated slowly above the table. And at its center, a glowing treaty pulsed with pale blue light waiting. Commander Lyraxa stood tall across from Helena. Her ceremonial armor bore scuff marks from the earlier chaos. Her 4 eyes blinked out of sync, subtle, but telling. She was shaken, and changed. She picked up the stylus, paused, then pressed her signature into the treaty with steady hands. Lyraxa, quietly. All Morgarian forces will retreat from human space. The treaty is signed. She lowered the pen, but didn't step away. Instead, she studied the woman across from her. Not with suspicion, not with fear, but with curiosity. The kind that only comes after seeing the impossible. A beat of silence. Lyraxa, softly. "But, are there more like you among humans?" Helena's eyes sparkled. Not with power, not with pride, but with something deeper, older. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned, gazing at the star map above them, watching the constellations shift like ghosts across time. And then softly, like a secret given only once. "Helena," smiling. "Humanity is full of surprises. some ancient, some waiting to awaken. The room seemed colder for a moment, as if something unseen had just passed through. Commander Lyraxa didn't respond. She only nodded slowly, like someone who knew not to ask more than the truth offered. Peace was signed that day. But more than a treaty had been made. A message had been sent. And across the stars, those who watched began to whisper. Earth is not what we thought it was. The hangar was white and shadowed, lit by cold white lights that flickered overhead like fading stars. A human shuttle stood on the launch pad, its hatch open, its engines humming low. Around it, a group of rescued human prisoners waited, still dazed, still unsure if this was survival or a dream. Among them stood Helena. Unmarked, untouched. But every Morgarian in the hangar stepped aside when she passed. Not by order, but by instinct. The atmosphere was thick with a kind of reverence, the kind reserved for storms that had passed without destroying everything. And then, from the far side of the hangar, King Vormal appeared. No longer clad in armor. No longer encased in the machine he once ruled like a second skin. He was limping. His gait uneven. His breath shallow. But even in defeat, he stood tall, still a king. Or at least, the remnants of one. He stopped a few paces from her, his voice rasped and low. Vormal, quietly. We will remember this. Helena turned. No rage. No gloating. Just stillness. And in her eyes the lesson already written. Helena. Good. Remember what happens when diplomacy is crushed under pride. She stepped past him. Not quickly, but like time itself had no hold on her. And as she reached the shuttle ramp, something behind her began to rise into the air. Tiny fragments of wood. Familiar. They swirled in silence, weightless, graceful, until they found each other pulled by invisible purpose. The pendant. Whole again. It floated above the console near the launch bay, hovering, as if waiting to be acknowledged. Then gently it lowered itself onto the cold surface. And rested. No glow. No sound. But the room felt it. Even those who didn't understand felt it. Some artifacts are more than symbols. They are memories, in disguise. And when they return to wholeness, it is never by accident. Helena did not look back. The shuttle ramp rose. The engines warmed. And the last of the silence became legend. The stars stretched out endlessly beyond the viewport. A tapestry of distant suns, cold nebulae, and unknowable darkness. Inside the human shuttle, the hum of the engine was the only sound. Soft, almost meditative. The rescued colonists sat quietly, wrapped in emergency blankets, whispering among themselves. Some stared in disbelief. Others in silent gratitude. None of them dared to speak too loudly. Except one. A young woman barely 20 edged forward from her seat. Her eyes were wide with something between fear and wonder. She looked at the figure seated near the front of the shuttle. Still. Calm. Hands folded. Eyes closed. Helena Mirov. The girl hesitated, then found her voice. Colonist, nervously. Miss Mirov? Were you really the witch from the stories? A long pause. Helena didn't open her eyes right away. When she did, she gazed out the viewport, watching as the Morgarian flagship shrank behind them, swallowed by the void. Then, slowly, she turned. Her face was calm. Her voice, quiet. But there was a glint in her eye. Something timeless. Something that remembered. Helena. Diplomatic missions are full of legends. Some are more true than others. She gave the girl a small, enigmatic smile. And that was all. The shuttle sailed forward into the unknown, leaving behind wreckage, war, and a single floating pendant no one dared touch. Across the galaxy, the story would spread. Not of weapons, or treaties, but of a woman who stood alone, and reminded empires what to fear. Not armies, not fire, but what waits, quietly, inside legends. Some stories end with explosions, some with final words carved in defiance. But the most dangerous stories end quietly, with a signature, with a whisper, with a soft reassembly of something ancient that was never meant to be broken. The Morgarians believed they had witnessed a diplomatic negotiation. In truth, they stood in the presence of a reckoning. They signed a treaty. But what they really signed was an admission that even the most powerful empire in the galaxy could not comprehend what walks among the humans. They thought Earth was primitive, predictable, fragile. They were wrong. And Helena Mirov? She may not be the only one. There are others, scattered across worlds, hiding in plain sight. Some still sleeping, some already watching. So now we ask you, what if the myths we were told to fear, witches, wanderers, gods in human form, never truly left? What if they adapted? What if Earth has always been protected, not by weapons, but by legends? Would you recognize one if they walked beside you? Tell us what you believe in the comments. Do you think humanity hides more than history admits? Do you think power like hers still exists in this world, or has it only begun to awaken? Because here on Alien Chronicles, we don't just chase stories. We follow echoes. We collect warnings. We document the impossible. And we're not the only ones watching. So hit subscribe. Turn on the signal. And remember this: some truths were never meant to be buried, and some beings were never meant to be questioned. We'll see you in the next transmission.